post-harvest physiology. Physiology of the plants is very different from the pre-harvest to the post-harvest, and we have one of the world's leading authorities in this, so it's great that he has agreed to come and give us a presentation on this. I'm not going to go into his background or his training. I'm going to tell you that he's been with Driscoll's about 10 years, and prior to that he was postdocing at Davis, and then I'm going to let him tell you about his background. So after he finishes, we're going to do a packing exercise. I've got a bunch of fruit up here that were picked this morning. You're going to put them in clamshells and as fast as you can and see how well you do that. So we kind of thought we could take the fruit home and eat it. Okay, so with that, Dr. Malkeet.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Glad to be here. I guess you guys must be very exciting, like last week, or there is another week left. I don't see that much excitement. I don't know if it's about the presentation or you're just tired because of your exams. So I'll talk a little bit about post-harvest handling. Before I go in that, this is how I'm going to talk about throughout my presentation. You will hear a little bit about me, about the company. You might have heard from other speakers already, so I'll touch a little bit on what Driscoll is all about. Also, you probably heard a lot about this word delight from other speakers, so I'll talk a little bit about what exactly that means, quality, and how they are related, and then I'll get into more core of post-harvest physiology, what we do and what needs to be done in berry industry. So I'm going to focus more on strawberries, but whatever I talk here, it actually works for all berries and most of the time with other fruits too, because cold chain and temperature you will hear a lot about. It's applicable to many other fruits and vegetables. So a little bit about myself. I grew up in India, so I hope many of you know where India is, but if you don't, this is the world map, and this is US, and this is where India is. And I grew up in northeast part of India, right close to the Pakistan border. So that's where I got my bachelor in agriculture. So just to give you perspective, four-year degree like here, and we had like 110 credit hours throughout those 4 years, and we touch every aspect of agriculture, entomology, agronomy, pathology. So we they give you introduction to everything to kind of get you interested in agriculture, and then you pick up different areas based on your interest. After I finished my bachelor, I did my master's from the same university in horticulture, and that's where my focus was more on fruit crops, and my research was more on post-harvest physiology of citrus. So I did work on post-harvest citrus crops. After that, I worked for a year as extension specialist there, really working with growers, providing them guidance on post-harvest handling. Then I decided to do my PhD, and I came to States in 2003, started my PhD at LSU. And my PhD was in horticulture, but really focused more on post-harvest physiology of sweet potatoes. So you can see how I started from citrus to sweet potatoes, now working with berries. After doing my PhD, I did my postdoc at UC Davis for a couple of years and started working with Driscoll in 2010. So I'm just close to finish 10 years with Driscoll's. So a little bit about Driscoll's. I know you might have heard from other speakers. It's a family-owned business, over 100 years of farming operation. And strawberries growing in Pajaro Valley goes back to 1860. So Pajaro Valley is where Watsonville, Salinas, all that area, where company basically started in 1904. Before that, strawberries were grown in 1860, and you can see in this picture that they were shipped through freight trains, and you can imagine no cold chain, just shipped by train, how fruit quality will be when it gets to the consumers. And in 1904, Joe Reiter and his brother-in-law, Richard Driscoll, began growing strawberries. So Driscoll word came from his last name, but now it's owned by Reiter family. So most of the Driscoll is family-owned business, but Mile Reiter is the owner of the business now, and he is the grandson of Joe Reiter. They started growing raspberries in 1937. So before that, it was strawberry, and company name used to be Driscoll Strawberry Associates. And recently, like 3 years ago, decided to change name to Driscoll's Inc. only because we grow strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, blackberries. But before that, it was named as Driscoll's Strawberry Associates. And in 1940, they started a Strawberry Institute, so which was more of a research institute to develop better varieties, and also not only for strawberries, but also for raspberries. And in 1950, Driscoll Strawberry Associate was founded to basically market premium fruit to the customer. Before that, there were more like a local market. You will take fruit not to distant markets, but ship close to the market. But Driscoll was founded to ship across the country. And like I mentioned, that most of the stuff was shipped by freight, train freight at that time. So it's a global brand. We are present in all 6 continents except Antarctica, and the way I guess global warming is happening, so maybe we'll be growing there in next many years. Who knows? But we are in 6 continents, 22 countries, 500 customers across 6 continents, 350 million consumers, and this slide is a little bit old, so now we have more than people, more than the US population consumers around the world. So looking at the workforce, we have 115,000 farm workers across globe who works for Driscoll part-time, picking berries or doing different things, and 700 growers. Majority of them are in US and Mexico. We have about 150 in Europe, and then about 25 in Australia, and then we just started growing in China. Again, you might have heard about our vision and mission and values. Our vision, which was developed like 4 years ago, is to become world's berry company, enriching the lives of everyone we touch. So not becoming only the world's biggest berry company, but become world's berry company in a sustainable way, that we don't exploit natural resources. Wherever we go, we take care of the natural resources, and there is a lot of focus on water conservation, enriching the communities where we are going, not just going there and growing berries without thinking about how that's going to change lives of people who live there. So that's pretty, pretty aspiring vision, but that's a journey. We will continue that journey for many years. And mission, you probably heard about this too, and I just want you to pay close attention to the word delight, because most of my presentation is going to go around that word delight here, to continually delight berry consumers through alignment with our customers and our berry growers. So customers are our retail customers like Walmart, Costco, Kroger's, and consumers like you, people who eat actually berries. And we have berry growers, so we want to delight our consumers through alignment with our customers and berry growers. And these are our values: passion, humility, and trustworthiness. So my role at Driscoll, so you heard a little bit about my background, that I got most of my background in agriculture and horticulture, but my role at Driscoll has kind of evolved a lot in past few years. And you can see post-harvest at Driscoll, everything relates to fruit quality and delight. Post-harvest is responsible for that. I have 5 people reporting to me. So we do a lot of work on technology and innovation. You will hear a little bit more about that later during the presentation. We support our breeders and R&D department. You heard from one of our breeder, Phil Stewart, the other day. We provide global support. We don't have post-harvest in every business unit globally, so we provide support from here. If they have question about how to handle our raspberries, what kind of packaging we should use, so we provide that support. And then supply chain and packaging, again, you will hear a lot about the work we do with packaging. So we were just joking a little bit earlier that I got my PhD in horticulture and I started working at Driscoll doing stuff with packaging, and all of a sudden I'm packaging expert in the company. And I did not have any education through the university. I did not even take a single course on packaging. So the idea is that how you can learn from the university and take that knowledge and you can move around in different areas. And anytime you have any question, please feel free to raise your hand, and I'll try to explain it. So we were talking about delight. Interestingly, our mission has been there for many years. But we recently, I would say 5-6 years ago, we started thinking about, okay, we talk a lot about delighting the consumer, but what exactly delight is? So how we really define delight. So we came up with this definition that delight occurs when the consumer's eating experience meets, or more importantly, regularly exceeds their expectations. So when you're going to the market, you're buying, whether you're buying berries or apples or whatever fruit or vegetable you're buying, you have certain expectation about that this is how it's going to taste like. When I go home, I'm going to eat it. So how we can meet those expectations or even exceed those expectations, if we do that, that's when we are delighting our consumers. And then we further went deep into it, that these are the 3 core elements of delight: condition, appearance, and flavor. Condition is what really gets berries to the market. So when we pick berries, if their condition is not good, they have a lot of bruising or decay, they're not going to make it to the consumer. So that's what's called condition. And appearance is how it looks like. So when you do the packing, make sure that how it looks like, because it has to look good to the consumer, and that's what gets berries sold. You look at it and you can't taste it at the retail store. You look at it and you're like, oh, this looks nice. It's nicely packed, all red, all same size, same shape. So you buy from the appearance, and that's what berries get sold. And the third component, which is most important, is flavor. So then you bite into it and you judge it's sweet, it has nice texture, it's juicy, and that's what brings consumer back. So if you don't like it, you're not going to buy it again. So these 3 core elements, and delight is only possible when you are actually meeting all 3 elements, because if you miss one, we can have a really good condition and appearance. If you don't like the taste, you're not going to come back and buy more. So all 3 elements have to come together to have that delightful experience for our consumers. And everything we do in our company, whether we are breeding, whether we are developing a new packaging, tools to measure quality, everything revolves around delight. So now quality and delight, it's sometimes a little bit confusing that, okay, yeah, we are talking about delight, but what is exactly the quality. So they are related, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, how. So this is actually definition from the web, that it's really defined as degree of excellence, that anything you are looking at, because we have quality programs, our competition has quality program too, and they are looking at, but they are not, their quality parameter might not be as strict as us, or our might not. I'm not necessarily saying that their quality is bad, but there are different ways of looking at things. So how you're spending time and on details and looking at each and every defect, it really what's quality is. This basically, again, if you look at the definition, that it's really degree of excellence in that specific product. It could be berry, it could be something else. And so quality, when we define quality, it could be different depending on who you talk to. If you talk to grower want high yield and easy to harvest berries. They want insect pest resistance, long shelf life. That's what quality means to them. If you talk to consumer, they want good appearance, good flavor, good nutrition, long shelf life. So everything we do here at Driscoll is really to find that balance. Because if you don't have balance, somebody's losing. If our growers are losing, if we give them that, oh, this is a variety which has really good flavor, but it doesn't have high yield, how they are going to make money? And we have independent grower model, which means that we have independent growers. We give them our varieties, and they produce them, and they market ship under our label. If growers are not making money, there is no Driscoll, because Driscoll is because of growers. So we need to find that balance where grower varieties are high yielding, they are meeting these quality specs for growers, but at the same time, they are meeting what consumer wants. So that's the balance. So what I mentioned here, pay for quality system. So I'll talk a little bit how we evaluate our quality. Most of our fruit is packed in the field, in those clamshell you will use today to pack. Once fruit is packed, it comes to a center location where we have certain specs, how many green berries could be there, how many small berries could be there, how many bruise. So our QA inspectors, they take certain samples, certain number of clamshell out of the whole pallet, and then they evaluate each and every berry out of those 4 or 5 clamshell, and they look at how many has bruise, how many are green, how many has small size. And based on that, each pallet get a product quality score, what we call PQ score. So each pallet has product quality score, and if it meets certain threshold, then it passes Driscoll's standard, and then it can be shipped anywhere in the states, whether East Coast, West Coast. In addition, sorry.
Would you be able to show us how that scale actually works on the fruit that we have here, maybe when we do the packing exercise?
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about that. Yeah, sure. Above that, so we talk about condition, appearance, and flavor. So condition is when they bring fruit, we look at how many have bruising and decay. Those are 2 main components of condition. What we call condition, the things which can get worse during the supply chain. And decay and bruising can get worse. Appearance has green tip or misshapen or size, which are not going to get worse in the supply chain, but they do make bad appearance in the clamshell. So that's what we call appearance. So we look at that, we look at condition, and the third part is flavor. So what we do with flavor, we measure bricks. If some of you have taken Dr. White's post-harvest class or other food science class, bricks is a measure of total soluble solids in the fruit, and it's a good indicator of sugars, how much sugar is in the fruit. Higher the bricks, generally within same variety, means higher flavor. So we measure bricks, and we pay grower based on the higher bricks. So if growers bring higher bricks, we give them more money than the grower who brings lower bricks. So what that means, that some growers are going for condition, and they are picking fruit which is not fully ripe. So fruit has less bruising and other things, but it doesn't have good flavor. So we want to, the way we incentivize grower, we give them more money for flavor. So our pay for quality system works in a way that we take money out of a pocket of a different grower who is not focused on flavor, and give it to the grower who is more focused on flavor. And it's same amount of money in that pool, but some growers get more because they are more focused on flavor. Some growers get less because they are more focused on condition and appearance. So we try to find that balance. So we talked about delight and quality. So now what's the relationship? So quality could be something, okay, we are consistently delivering same type of fruit or same appearance, same condition, same flavor, and we are doing that on consistent basis, that every time you buy Driscoll's berries, you will get same experience. So that's what is more about quality, that consistent quality. But when we talk about delight is more about the expectation. The difference is that once you start getting same quality, even though it's a good quality, your expectations start going higher. So next time you want a little bit better. So that's what's called the delight, that your expectation as a consumer change over time. Our quality may not have changed, but now you've been getting consistent quality, and you're thinking that, I want a little bit more sweeter. I want a little bit better looking fruit. So your expectation keep going up. So how we can meet those expectations consistently, that's what's called delight. So I hope you're getting a little bit of difference between delight and quality, that you might be shipping consistent quality all the time, but that doesn't mean that you're meeting delight expectation of the consumer, because over time they keep going higher. And in real life, you will see this with everything. You get used to thing and you want it better now. Whether you're using a technology or whether you're doing something else, you use it for a while and you're like, oh, I wish it has this feature, I wish it has this. So your expectation keep going higher. So delight is really how we can meet those expectations, but not just consistently delivering same quality food. So now I'm going a little bit more on the physiology side. I'll touch briefly. You might have taken some courses in plant science. What happened before and after harvest. Most of my rest of the presentation is going to be after harvest, but I thought it will be good to kind of revisit this. So before harvest, you have this strawberry plant growing, and you have carbon dioxide, sunlight, water, photosynthesis. So you're getting a lot of carbohydrates moving through photosynthesis from plants. Plants are making those carbohydrates, leaves are making those carbohydrates, but then they are depositing in fruit in terms of sugars. What happened, and it's giving off oxygen, leaves are giving off oxygen. What happened after harvest, you're cutting off water, and fruit is still respiring. So process after harvesting is called respiration, and fruit is giving carbon dioxide and heat and water in terms of transpiration. So you're losing water now. So you can see that a lot of stuff is happening here is opposite to what's happening here. So how we can slow down this process of respiration is all about post-harvest, basically. If you take one message from this whole presentation is how we can minimize the respiration rate of produce in general, not about berries only, with temperature management and with other things after harvest. That's really all about post-harvest, and there are different ways you will see to do that. So as I mentioned, so these carbohydrates which are inside the fruit now, they're getting oxygen from the air. They're breaking that into carbon dioxide, water, and energy, which is heat energy. This energy produced through respiration is called vital heat or field heat, and that's the heat you want to remove as soon as fruit is picked. You want to pre-cool it quickly so that you can remove all that field heat and bring temperature down to, depending on the fruit we are talking about. For berries, you cool it down to 32. For some other commodities which are more chilling sensitive, you cool it down to 50 degree or 45 degree. And as I mentioned, fruit respiration is the most critical factor, and how we reduce that, that's the whole post-harvest strategies. So respiration and temperature. So respiration can vary by berry type. I'm just talking about berries now, but it varies by all fruits and vegetables. If you can see in this graph here, so this blue line is raspberries, red line is blackberry, green is strawberry, and this purple is blueberry. And this is temperature, and this is CO2. And the main thing, as I mentioned in respiration, you can see as temperature increase, your respiration goes up, high CO2 production. But at the same time, you can see the difference between berries. Blue raspberries has almost double the respiration rate than blueberries. And if you know from your experience of buying fruit that raspberries don't last long in your refrigerator, but blueberries can last for a couple of weeks or sometimes 3 weeks if you keep the temperature good. And same thing with strawberries, higher respiration rate than blueberries, but lower than raspberries. So just based on this graph, you can say that raspberry is the most sensitive berry as far as post-harvest shelf life and quality is concerned. And that's the most challenging crop for us to work with. It doesn't last long, and temperature is the most important thing to do to keep it last long. And you can see based on this slide that for every 10 degrees C increase in temperature, rate of deterioration increased 2 to 3-fold. So what does that mean? That every 10 degrees C increase in temperature, your shelf life cut in half. So if you have a fruit has 10 days of shelf life, if it's left at high temperature for a longer period of time, it's going to cut that shelf life to 5 days. So that's how critical temperature is. It's a general statement. Of course, it depends on many other factors, initial quality and other things. So now, impact of cold chain. So I talked a lot about temperature already. So you can see based on that fruit respiration curve I showed in the previous slide, at 32 degree, a ton of strawberries will produce 3,300 BTU, British thermal unit. If you have taken some engineering classes, that's a measure of energy and heat. At 80 degree Fahrenheit, you can see that 41,800. So more than 10 times more energy is produced, or heat is produced. So the whole idea of cooling is to take that heat out and pre-cool fruit within 1 to 2 hours. So how we do it? So when fruit comes from the field, and I can use these boxes for a little demo here. So you pack fruit in these clamshell. So we pay close attention to first part, where the vents are on these clamshell. So because we need these vent holes for the cooling. And also how they are aligned with the tray, because you can have a bunch of vents here, but if there are no vents here, there is going to be no airflow through the fruit, and fruit won't get cooled. The other part is you have one box here, and then when you build the whole pallet, and you have another box here, and you want that, these are two different boxes, that's why they're not fully aligned, but you want these vent hole aligned with these, so that once you have airflow, it goes through that tray, through that fruit, and that's how it's pre-cooled. If you look at this, this diagram here, the way it's done now, what we call forced air cooling. So basically, air is forced through the pallets. So these are pallets, 1, 2, 3, 4, and each pallet has, it varies, but for strawberries, for example, 108 trays, like this. So each pallet has 108 trays, and there is a fan. So basically, you cover this with a tarp, and there are 4 pallets on this side, 4 pallets on this side, and these vent holes you see here, these are on this side. So you put a tarp here and you create a vacuum. You create a vacuum that the air can only, so there is a suction fan here. So fan is sucking the cold air. Imagine this is a cold room, and fan is sucking the cold air through the berries, and the hot air is going through here. Fan is sucking it and taking it to the coil. It's getting cooled, come back to the room, and go through the pallet all day long. So you can do 8 to 12 pallets within a couple of hours, depending on what temperature is out there. If you're picking fruit at 70, 80 degree Fahrenheit, you bring them, you put them in what we call forced air tunnel, and you can bring that temperature down to 32 degree within a couple of hours, and you keep doing that all day long, and you store that fruit and you start shipping based on customer orders. So the critical part for packaging, we do a lot of work on packaging to make sure that there are enough venting at the right place, because on this side you see that there are no vents, but air is flowing through this side, and even though there are no vents here, no vents here, on this side it doesn't really matter, because air is not really trying to move through that side. So that's why you want to make sure that packaging is fully aligned as far as vents in consumer pack, what we call clamshell in packaging, and this is the way we do. Sometime you will hear room cooling. What room cooling is, you bring a pallet full of strawberries and you have a cold room here, you just leave it there and for overnight, and it will eventually cool. But if you don't have a lot of airflow in that room, your center of the pallet will stay hot and it will start building condensation, and that will cause issue down the road in your supply chain. That will start getting mold. So nobody in strawberry industry, in berry industry general, do any kind of room cooling. It can work with some other crops like melons, where you have big bins and with a lot of airflow, like plastic bins. It can work, and it has longer shelf life, so you can afford to leave those pallets inside a cold room for a day or two. But for strawberries, we want to cool them as soon as possible, so within a couple of hours. How we are doing? Any question? How are we doing on time?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Any question on this part? No? Okay. So I'll move through this quickly, just based on the time also. This is just showing impact of temperature. You can see that this fruit was left for 10 days at 0 C, versus this has fluctuation in temperature. and you have 15% decay versus 1.5% decay. Same thing here, 45% decay compared to 13%, and this is strawberry and this is raspberries. So you can compare the temperature difference. Another important component in our supply chain, which we usually get really frustrated about because we don't have a lot of control on transportation, transit damage. So a lot of, when you load full truck with strawberries or raspberries or mix, you have a lot of vibration on top part, especially in front and back end of the trailer, where your axles are, and it resonates from bottom to top, and always top boxes have more damage. And we have tried various things to fix it. So our fruit coming from Mexico, we put this wood frame on top, and we put these vertical strapping through the pallet, what we call unitizing the pallet, and so that whole pallet moves as one unit, and not that top boxes are moving on their own. We are still seeing issue. It's such a difficult issue to fix. And of course, we don't have our own trucks or trailers. We rely on other industries for that. But these are some of the damage you will see. Blackberries start turning red with the damage, and it's a change in pH of the fruit, and anthocyanin color pigment, if you have heard about them, change color with change in pH, and they start turning red. This is damage of raspberries, and we do also strapping like this just to avoid that. Quickly, there are 3 major classes of post-harvest technologies: modified atmosphere, edible coating, pads, inserts, and sachets. Modified atmosphere, so you have regular air, 21.9% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, 0.01% CO2. So anytime you change that, it's called modified atmosphere. So what we do with raspberries, with all our berries actually, we elevate CO2 from 0.01% in the air to 12 to 15%, and reduce oxygen level. It slows down the respiration. Remember, I'll talk about respiration, and it helps to reduce the decay also. And we put these bags on the pallet, and then we seal it and pull the vacuum and inject CO2 in, and then that's how we ship fruit. Most of our fruit goes in these bags. And it's called active modified atmosphere because we are injecting CO2. If we are just putting bag and remember, fruit is giving off CO2 too. So if we just put a bag, seal it, and let fruit respire and build CO2, that's called passive modified atmosphere. But in this case, because we are adding CO2, it's called active modified atmosphere. And most of the strawberry industry use this. But the downside is that if you have too much CO2, it can cause anaerobic flavor, more like acidic flavor in the berries, and also make fruit soft. So still there is a balance that you need to have a right balance for botrytis, a decay organism, but also not to impact the flavor. So there are various MA technologies, not only CO2. CO2 is one way, but there are companies who are working on using ozone inside the clamshell. So basically, there is a company, if you have no vents, and then you heat seal with the film, and then with electric impulse, they generate ozone inside the punnet. Of course, in that case, there are no vents, so they pre-cool fruit before packing, and then they generate ozone. It's still in the testing phase. It's not commercially used. And also Perfotech, which is a laser-based perforation in the film, and it creates modified atmosphere based on the fruit respiration. So everything is closed, but only film has micro perforation, and with fruit respiration, it builds up CO2 inside. And this is what you have already heard about. Breathaway is a membrane which you can put on the bag, and this is there is a hole on the bag, and then you put this membrane, and anytime CO2 levels go too high, this membrane will open and it will let some of that CO2 flow out. So these are some of the new developments happening in the industry. Edible coating, I won't spend too much time on it. It's just basically dipping fruit in different types of chemicals, natural, synthetic, and it creates a coating outside the fruit which helps to reduce weight loss. We are not actively looking at it because most of our fruit is packed in the field. We don't do any kind of dipping at this point. In future, if we go with pack line or ready-to-eat fruit which is already washed, we will look into this, but right now, but there are, just to give you some information, there are companies looking at some of that stuff. Of course, this is more applicable to other crops like apples and avocados and other things where you pack on a packing line and not to the berries. There are other things. It's Fresh is a company. A lot of fruits and vegetables give off ethylene. It's a ripening hormone. Berries don't give a lot of ethylene, but bananas and apples, they give off a lot of ethylene. And if you don't control ethylene around the packaging, it causes more issue with the shelf life. So there are companies who are working on little small sachets which can absorb ethylene. Some are more based on essential oils like thyme oil. It gives off volatile, which have antifungal properties. There is a company called Chill Safe out of Australia. They have this hydrogen peroxide sachet, which has antifungal properties. Again, nothing is commercial here, but a lot of companies are working on technologies how we can extend or maintain shelf life. We talked about quality system. A lot of our quality is done subjectively now. We have people looking at fruit, and it's very subjective. Bruising could be different for me than someone from your side. You may say, oh, this looks like a bruise, and I may say, well, it is a bruise, but I think it's still marketable. So what we are moving away from subjective to more objective evaluation. So there is a company in Silicon Valley, so where we are using machine learning. So we have developed this box here. It has one camera on top, one camera on bottom, and there is a clear plastic tray. So we take fruit out of the pallet, put it on that clear plastic tray, put inside this cabin, and you have LED lights in there. So first top LED lights here come on. It takes picture from top. Bottom LED lights come on and take picture from the bottom. And it can give you how many berries are there within seconds. How many berries are there, how many are greens, how many have bruise, how many have small size based on the tolerance we put in the machine. So this is becoming a reality. We have a couple of machines in Santa Maria we are testing right now. So a lot of moving from subjective to objective evaluations. A lot of tools. I talked about bricks to measure flavor. So the way we measure flavor right now, we take few berries, we put them in a kind of sandwich bag, mush them, take juice out of them, put it on a machine called a refractometer, and it gives you bricks reading. So there's a lot more work in there, and there are new methods of doing it where these are called near infrared, different wavelength of light, and you can just scan fruit and it gives you bricks reading within like few seconds. So we are testing some of these technologies where we can measure without destructing the berries. It's portable, it's quicker, so a lot of things are moving to these tools. Last slide, we're done, I think almost. So a lot of work I mentioned on packaging side. We are looking at, depending on how consumer behavior is changing also, a lot of people want convenience, a lot of people even don't want to worry about washing their fruit, they want ready to eat on the go. So we are looking at a lot of different ways to do it. People like to have variety, so this is a pack we do in Europe, where we pack strawberries, raspberries, blueberries in the same pack. Plastic is a big concern from environment side. We are looking at packaging where it's all made of corrugate, but there's a window on top to see fruit. But also we are hearing from consumer that they are not able to see the berries from the side. So we are slowly moving in that direction because we also care what consumer wants. There are consumers who are willing to take chance even though they are not able to see the fruit. They are like, oh, this is very sustainable, this is environment friendly, I'm willing to purchase it even though I'm not able to see the fruit. And it's our responsibility also to build that trust, that as a consumer, if you are taking that chance on our fruit, you're not disappointed. And if you're not disappointed, then you will buy it again, you will go back again. Then you don't care about seeing the fruit. So we are also looking at some to-go pack that you just grab and go. This is what I was talking about, top seal. So right now everything is packed in these clamshell in the field. So what we are testing now, we are bringing fruit, what is called punnet in Europe. It's a term from Europe. So you don't have the lid, but you just bring fruit from the field in open punnets, and then you bring on a packing line, and then you put this film on top of it, and it can reduce 20% plastic, but it adds a lot of labor because you're dismantling the pallet and putting on a packing line, adjusting the weight, those kind of things. But we just tested this, still doing more work. This is our pack from Europe where we have completely moved, well, not 100%, but the base is corrugate. The lid is still plastic. All of our packaging in Europe is like this, and we're slowly, in Europe there is a lot more regulation and consumers are pushing more to the industry to move more environment friendly packaging than US. So if you go to US, you will see a lot of these types of pack compared to here. So I missed to mention this, that Driscoll actually was the first company to move from this little mesh basket to the clamshells in 1990s. So we basically discover or innovate from this, which caused a lot of damage to the fruit. And after moving from this to this, what really made us capable of shipping fruit across different states and geographies. So there are advantages of plastic, but we need to be more focused on recycling. A lot of this packaging is recyclable if you put it in the right type of containers. So we are doing a lot of work on developing labels also, which can come off easily during the recycle process. I think that's the last slide, and that's actually a good segue from packaging to packing. So make sure a lot of stuff we talked about, appearance and other things. So before we go there, yeah, any question? Yes?
Have you guys looked into biodegradable plastics? I just saw something about hemp plastics that biodegrades in like 80 days.
We have looked at PLAs, not hemp-based, I would say. And PLA has, again, clarity issue, and it takes longer than hemp. I'm not sure about the hemp yet. But to answer your question, no, we have not looked at hemp, but we have looked at PLA, and we are looking at more pulp-based, sugarcane, waste-based packaging, but those are not clear. And I'm not sure hemp packaging, is it clear or?
I think what I had seen was clear, but I didn't look too much into it.
Okay.
What's PLA?
PLA is a polylactic acid-based material, and it also degrades, but it takes longer time. And there are some environment issue with that too, having too much PLA going around, and it's not clear. But I think we will usually talk about that everything here it can be recycled. Some part of it is that we don't really have a lot of recycling plants. And the other issue is that this label, which we are putting on it, and it's industry issue, not just specific to Driscoll. There's a glue which goes in this label which is not recyclable. So you can't throw this in recycle plant or recycle stream, and this label won't come off easily. So one of the things we are looking at different types of labels and different types of glues which can come off easily, and then you can recycle the rest of it easily. Any other question?
Do you guys
Go ahead.
use recycled plastics to make your clamshells, or do you just?
Right. That's a very good point, and we were talking about that few days, that we, as a company, we don't do a good job on telling the story that there are some efforts going on. So this clamshell is 70 to 80% made from 70 to 80% recycled plastic. It's not virgin plastic. So most of it is, I can read it right now, made from 70% recycled drink bottles, and made from 50% energy from the sun. I'm not sure what that exactly means.
Jack had a question.
Yes, sir.
Strawberries are not climacteric.
They're not.
Blueberries are climacteric, but yet blueberries have such lower respiration than strawberries. I don't get it.
So climacteric peak, what they call it, when you look through the ripening curve, so if your ethylene production coincide with the increase in respiration, that's what they call climacteric. So blueberries is getting their what they call climacteric peak when it's still attached to the plant. So that's why it has still lower respiration, because climacteric peak happen when it's still attached to the plant. And we do see ethylene production, which there's some still research going on that. That's a good question, that there is not a clear demarcation between climacteric and non-climacteric. People have talked about berries being climacteric for years, and then, oh no, by the way, blueberries are non-climacteric. And ethylene, berries don't produce ethylene. We can measure a lot of ethylene production in our raspberries. And now there are companies who are working on like pads to absorb ethylene. But the way it doesn't work in our supply chain, that because we have vents all over the packs and we cool fruit quickly, even if we use ethylene pads in there, we are not able to measure any ethylene accumulation inside so it doesn't really help. If there is no accumulation inside the pack, there is no idea of putting a pad in there to absorb it. But especially raspberries, they produce a lot of ethylene. But because we have vents, it doesn't really stay inside the berries. If we put this in a closed environment, then ethylene is an issue. Then you need something to absorb ethylene. We work a lot with the company, It's Fresh. They kept coming back to us but they produce ethylene, which affect shelf life, and we were like, yeah, it does. But in our supply chain, the way our supply chain works, we have vents, we pre-cool fruit quickly. It doesn't provide any benefit in our supply chain. It's not about the technology, if it works in our supply chain or not.
So for climacteric, you have to have the rise in respiration with the rise in sugar, so rudderless.
Yeah, right.
So this would, respiration would rise and then fall, and then your sugars, if the sugars were a different graph here, they would rise and then plateau.
Right.
Right, and that's what makes it climacteric, is these things go up together, or there's a slight delay.
And and ethylene too.
And the ethylene evolution with it. You mentioned some containers, and we had a conference a couple years ago, the International Strawberry Symposium in Quebec City in Canada, and everywhere I went, they were selling strawberries in these. You didn't show, there's nothing, I've never seen these kind of things. They're so cute, right?
Yeah.
And they were everywhere I went to see strawberries for sale, whether it be the supermarket or on the side of the street or anywhere else, they were sold in these. The only plastic here is the handle.
Yep.
But what would you say about it? Why doesn't Driscoll's adopt this?
So, few things. One is that as you grow bigger, little changes become, any change become difficult. If we go back to our growers today and ask them to pack these, couple of issues. One is that how we cool it. So basically, it's good for a lot of local markets where you're not shipping fruit far. You may not even need cooling. If you're filling halfway, you can leave it in a cooling room because there is no lid. It will cool.
Your roadside stand.
Right. We see this a lot. Even our company actually does that. Does this in Europe. What we were talking about. We call them boards, and they are even cuter than this one. We call them little berry boards. So they are like this, open, but you see that in some supermarkets, but there's tiny amount of fruit. You can cool them even by having air going over the fruit, even though you don't have vents here. I think consumers are moving in that direction, and we are seeing that. Slowly, things will change, but as a company, we don't want to make a big change which impact our operation significantly, and consumers are not ready for it, and they may say that, I can't, in this case, you can see fruit, but if you have to pack like this, you have to have something else.
Well, the other thing is that all those sharp edges around
these
edges, those are very...
Yeah, so imagine this thing cutting into the berries. One thing I want to mention now, we talked about, is that if you look at, when you look at this clamshell, I don't know if you can see it, but there are a lot of sharp edges here.
This is the clamshell we'll be using, so we're going to use these to...
So these sharp edges, packaging companies put these in there because it provides more strength to the pack, but these are not good for the fruit. It cuts into the berries and you see a lot more bruising. If you look at Driscoll's clamshell, any Driscoll's clamshell, you will see that we put a lot of focus on package development. You will see the smooth wall. You don't see, compared to that, these ridges, and you can move this around and check it, but you can compare the one you have to that. Most of our packaging is really smooth wall, and you have to pay more for that because it adds more plastic. You need to have a little bit more plastic to make it smooth wall, and our packaging is a little bit more expensive than other packaging, but it handles our product better than these sharp edge packaging.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank
any other
you.
questions for Dr. Padda? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Pleasure. Thank you.
So we're going to do a little exercise here, and we want you to get gloved up.